大家好, I'm Nathan Rich, aka 火锅大王. Today I want to talk to you about Scotland, which is in the news recently because it tried to do a referendum on whether it should have independence or not. And that was shut down by the country that it's in, the United Kingdom. Whenever you think about the issues of sovereignty and whether a state is a country or not, inevitably Scotland will come up because it's always been a weird situation. It's part of the United Kingdom, but a lot of people call it a country. In fact, if you look in Wikipedia, it says it's a country. But actually, it's not a country. And the reason it's not a country is because it doesn't have de jure sovereignty. It also doesn't have de facto sovereignty, by the way. So the difference is de facto sovereignty would mean that Scotland can militarily control itself and is not, in fact, subject to any other ruling. Now, it is, in fact, subject to the ruling of the United Kingdom, so it does not have de facto sovereignty. But that's not what determines if it's a country or not. What determines if it's a country or not is if it has de jure, meaning legal sovereignty. So it doesn't have legal sovereignty. If they had successfully voted to become independent and that independence was then granted by the United Kingdom, then they would have the legal sovereignty, de jure sovereignty, and that would make them a country. Scotland's a little bit of a weird case because even though they don't have the legal sovereignty, they sort of had an option to pursue it by way of referendum locally. And they tried that a few years back. Now, here's the interesting thing about the referendum. First of all, it did not pass, meaning they did not vote to become independent. But the interesting thing to note is that it was pretty close, and the amount of people who voted to become independent was way more than the amount of people in Taiwan, which answered that they wanted immediate independence when they were polled. In fact, it's about 9 times as many. So around 9 times as many people in Scotland want independence immediately as people in Taiwan who want independence immediately. And even if you take the people in Scotland who want independence immediately and compare that to the percent of people in Taiwan who even eventually want independence, it still is much more. So what that tells us is that the people of Scotland, about half of them want to be independent from the United Kingdom. Now, they tried to do another referendum to see if it would go through this time, but it was denied by the courts of the United Kingdom. So what that means is that they don't have the de jure sovereignty and that they are in fact subject to the United Kingdom's laws. If they're subject to the United Kingdom's laws and the United Kingdom does not allow them to become a separate country or even to vote for it, then they have no de jure sovereignty and they are not a country. Therefore, surprise, Wikipedia and other tabloid type of sources are incorrect. It's not a country. And not only is it not a country, it has no legal direct path to even pursue becoming a country. If Scotland wanted to become its own country, it would need to go through the country that it is a part of, which is the United Kingdom. This is totally normal, totally standard in the entire world, and it's completely non-controversial. So if there's something that you disagree with that I just said, either that's because I'm not good at communicating it, or it's because you didn't understand me. There's nothing controversial about that. Scotland is not a country because it doesn't have the de jure sovereignty. It also doesn't have de facto sovereignty, which is irrelevant. It could become a country if the United Kingdom grants it that ability to, just like any other state and any other country. It depends on the national or the federal government. If you compare that to, for example, the United States, in the United States, California cannot unilaterally decide to exit the Union. Even if everyone in California votes that they want to leave the Union, it still is not allowed, which means California is not only not a country, it also has no direct legal path to becoming a country. It would have to try to secede with force, basically, or with some sort of negotiation or agreement. The reason that Scotland is not a country, even if everyone in Scotland voted to become independent, is that the land that they're on is inside of and is recognized to be inside of a country. That country is called the United Kingdom. Everything that I've said is completely non-controversial, completely standard, factual, not really even up for debate. It's just how the world works. And almost no one seems to argue with any of these facts. They're just self-evident, really. Anyone who takes even a cursory approach at trying to understand these things would just figure this out very straightforward. Yet all these facts magically don't apply when we're talking about China. You see, Taiwan is inside of China. Everyone in the world agrees with that. All of the countries, the vast majority of countries, officially agree to that. So, there's a state inside of a country. It's the almost exact same situation. They could try to hold a referendum, but it doesn't really matter because the federal or the national government would have to grant that right. Now, they don't have that right. So there is no legal path for Taiwan to become independent. They can do it by other means. They could negotiate, right? Or they could continue the war that's going on. They could turn to violence, and that is their right as humans. You always have the right to commit violence and to go to war, but there's a lot of major consequences for that, obviously. And by the same token, the national government or the federal government of a country can also choose to go to war with a state that's trying to push for secession. So when it comes to Taiwan, everybody magically forgets facts and how reality works as it becomes very politicized. It's just interesting to note the stark difference and how clear it is when it comes to Scotland, and how muddled and suddenly confusing and nuanced it is when it comes to Taiwan. No, it's very straightforward, very simple. Taiwan is a state in a country that does not have the legal right to become its own country. It could try to do that, but if it tries to do that, it's going to have to do that with negotiations or basically with force or war. My position has always been the same, which is that yes, the mainland could continue to go to war with Taiwan, and Taiwan could choose to do that with the mainland. That could happen. That's one way to continue moving forward. But I prefer that all sides try to go for peace, try not to have bloodshed, try to come up with some sort of settlement that allows everyone to go on, where everyone can maintain happiness and prosperity and peace. And yes, some compromises involved. Now, I don't know why that's become such a weird, strangely controversial opinion, but to me that's just common sense. Scotland's not a country. It could become one if it's granted the legal right from the country that it's in, which is the United Kingdom. If you understood that, then you have to do leaps of strange logic to explain to me why that doesn't apply to every other country in the world. Anyway, some food for thought when it comes to Taiwan and Scotland. Until next time, I'm Nathan Rich. Thanks, everybody. 谢谢.